I never wanted to tell my story, but it has to be done. It's been so long and nobody's known. But now I confide in you, my listener. Try and attempt to comprehend the horrors I experienced. This won't be easy for you to forget. It was just an ordinary night in my apartment. I was tired. The days at the office had been so stressful lately, and I looked forward to the quiet release of sleep. It always seemed to make everything better, but this night was different. The wind seemed ominous, the sky seemed darker, and as I relaxed in my chair watching my favorite shows before bed, I saw what appeared to be a strange silhouette standing outside my window. I focused my full sight on what I thought was there. Nothing. Just darkness. I figured it was just me being overtired. Just a little too much work today, that's all. I finished watching my show and retired to my bed. As I tried my best to sleep, I heard the door at the end of my bedroom creak. I dismissed it, too tired to get myself worked up over nothing. I then got the sense of something was watching me. I tried to shake it off. I just wanted to sleep. Finally, I heard something breathing, heavily and slowly. At first I thought it was me, and that I was psyching myself out. So I held my breath for a moment. It wasn't me. Oh God, it wasn't me. I jolted upward from my bed and opened my eyes. I became frozen as I saw, at the foot of my bed, a young girl with long dark hair, around the age of 8, maybe 10 years old. She was in a white nightgown. She stared at me with unblinking eyes and a wide smile. She had deep cuts covering her face, and her hands that hung at her side were covered in crimson blood. We both just stared at each other for a good moment, until she let out a horrifying, inhuman scream. At that moment, I tried to race for the door, but she leapt on me, digging her nails into my face. Her bright blue eyes inches away from mine, screaming all the while. The scream became deafening as I soon lost my balance and hit my head on the table next to my bed. There was a sudden white light and a dull pain as everything went dark and empty as I lost consciousness. I awoke in what appeared to be an empty basement. My clothes remained on except for my shirt. I struggled to find my balance. My head was covered in dry blood. I looked at my arms. There were cuts all down them. Cuts forming words. The words read, "Will you play with me?" It was also written on both my sides. I gazed around the room in horror and found an iron door with blood seeping around the base. I slowly made my way there. There was no sign of the girl, though I feared she may be behind the door. Despite my fear, I had to go in. I had to. What I saw was horrifying. Bodies lie spread across the wide room, all the way to the stairwell on the opposite corner. Men, women, children, all of them lying still. Cuts on their arms and legs similar to mine read, "Will you play with me?" Except these victims had something I didn't have. I looked at a nearby woman in horror. She laid on her back, her stomach split open as I came closer. What came into my sight was a large toy fire truck shoved in with her entrails. I choked back vomit and backed away. A man lying against the wall had metal jacks stuck into both his eyes. His skull had been caved in, and what lay next to him was a broken baseball bat, snapped in half in a pool of blood. A young boy lay lifeless, in the very middle. His mouth was wide open, and sticking out of it was the beginning of a toy car track. It had been shoved down his throat. His chest was cut open and his heart lay next to his body. In place of his heart were the dismantled pieces of a doll. I lost my control and vomited. I cried for a moment, but then the thought struck me. Where's the girl? I thought it very briefly before turning to the stairwell that stood in the corner of the room. I started walking towards it, but then I stopped. Something behind me was breathing heavily. I turned around, and there stood the girl. Was she in the corner of the room the whole time while I was examining the bodies? She then said, in a sultry voice that didn't fit her appearance and filled me with terror, "Will you play with me?" She began screaming. I turned to run away, but she was on me, knife-sharp nails driving into my back and my neck. I struggled, and eventually I threw her off of me and onto the ground. I ran for the door, but it slammed shut. I banged on it and cursed, blood running down my back. It would not open. She was on me again. I elbowed her face. She drove her nails into my back. I managed to push her off and turn around. As she lunged, I caught her. Her big, blue eyes inches away from mine. Her nails plunged into my face, her screams deafening my ears. She raised one hand, smiling ear to ear, and her fingers plunged down into my eyes. Everything went black. I woke up in the hospital, bandages covering my body, including both of my eyes. A police officer stood in my room, speaking with a doctor. They saw I was awake, I guess. They informed me I was the only survivor of a mass murder, and that the suspect, a middle-aged man, had been captured. I told them about the girl. They said no girl was found at the scene. They didn't believe me. They told me I should rest. 2 weeks passed and I was cleared to leave. As I was being wheeled through the hospital, permanently scarred and blind in one eye, I was left in the waiting room for my ride. I realized it had some toys lying on the ground. Jacks, a fire truck, a doll, and a car track. Sitting with these toys was a small girl with long, dark hair. She wore a white gown. Her back was turned to me, but as I watched her, my blood ran cold as her back straightened, and in that same sultry voice that set every wound on my body on fire, she said, "Will you play with me?"